Hey guys, Alex here from Trademate Sports. Today I wanted to do something a little bit different and kind of compare some aspects of soccer or football. We'll call it football in this case, so like the English Premier League, those kind of leagues, and comparing them to betting, sports betting, with just some topics like randomness, noise, kind of I like to call like short-term opinions, I guess. Kind of talk about the two in each aspect and how they really come well together, and how you can almost adapt the way you look at football, and use that as a way to look at your betting too. So to start this conversation off, what I wanted to do was use the example of the English Premier League, which has been a pretty crazy season so far, and I think that's been highlighted mostly by kind of the manager circus slash just randomness in results and the runs that teams have gone on. So as you all probably know, everyone wanted Ole Gunnar Solskjaer sacked at the start of the season after 5 or 6 games. Then they went on a run. Then it shifted over to Arsenal and Mikel Arteta. Everyone wanted him sacked. Didn't happen. Then they've gone on a run recently. And then it moved on to Chelsea and Frank Lampard. We know how that ended. Frank Lampard was actually sacked, unlike the Arteta and Solskjaer situation. And now, so that's only happened a couple of days ago, and now I kind of get the feeling, I might be completely wrong here, but the conversation's starting to turn towards a team like Liverpool, and they're kind of starting to think about, is it over for Klopp and these kind of things. So I don't want to put my opinions on anyone in either way. That is not what this is about. But what I want to do is take you over to my screen and kind of start to look at some of the metrics behind some of these teams, and how we can eliminate randomness or just short-term opinions. I think that's the best way of putting it, and how we can adapt that to our betting. So I'll take you over to my screen now. So what I've got on my screen here is the website Understat, which is a really great place to go for soccer statistics and these kind of things. And the common thing I want to talk about here is a measurement called XG, so expected goals, which that stands for. Basically looks at, based on positioning of shots and scenarios in the game, where you're like how many goals you should have scored from these scenarios. Like a penalty, for example, is a very high XG because most of the time people score. So what this site looks at is whether, or at least what you can do with this website, is you can look at whether your league positioning on the table is where it should be, based on the amount of shots or the amount of goals you should have scored. So firstly, let's look at the table here, and you've got just your standard rankings here and where everyone's placed at the moment. Sorry for the teams down the bottom here, but what we can first look at is where these teams should be based on their expected goals or expected points in this scenario. So at the moment, Manchester City are where they should be. But then as you go down the table, it gets pretty crazy. So Liverpool is sitting in 5th, but they should be on 35 points. In 2nd, teams like Chelsea, right up there, who are in 10th. Manchester United, reasonably far down, and Leicester, far down from their actual positions. West Ham too. Arsenal are probably the only team that are sitting where they kind of should be. So this is just an interesting way for people to look at results of football, because it's a more accurate measurement to use than looking at just results of the game. Because as we know, in football, there's so much randomness that can happen in one game. Like you could be dominating. You could have, let's just say, Liverpool playing Burnley for the whole game. Liverpool are dominating Burnley, let's just say, and they can't get through them, they can't get through the low block, etc., etc. Then 5 minutes from the end of play, Burnley score a goal, and although Liverpool have dominated the whole game, the final score shows Burnley winning 1-0. But if you look at that from a more statistical point of view and how the game should have gone, and I guess a more realistic point of view, Liverpool played a good game. They were just unlucky, and that happens in football. So you can kind of use this data to look at a team's results, whether they're good or bad, and judge whether they deserve that win or they didn't deserve that win, or maybe it just should have been a draw, these kind of things. So we can delve a bit deeper here into a team like Manchester United. So they're coming second, but they're ranked 4th here. So although everyone's kind of turned the conversation on Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and saying, oh, well, maybe he's not that bad anymore, and he's brought them to 2nd in the league, they're still overachieving by 7 or basically 8 points here. Chelsea is a great example. Frank Lampard just sacked, and they're coming 3rd on expected goals. So maybe Frank was a little bit unlucky. Maybe, I mean, there's so many ways you can look at this data and interpret it, but he should have been 6 points. He should have, gotten 6 more points out of Chelsea than he did. And I'm not saying that that Frank shouldn't have been sacked or anything like that, but I think all I'm saying is there's really interesting data out there that you can look at and judge more, I would say, non-biasedly, if that's even just with less bias. That's probably the better way of putting it. Brighton are an incredible example this season. I would say that I'm guessing they're about 10th here on the expected points table, and they're coming 17th in real life. So there might be people out there, I'm not sure if there is, that are saying Graham Potter should be out of here. He's useless, blah, blah, blah. We're in a relegation battle, we're in trouble. We need to get someone to bring, someone new in, and you look at the data and he's doing a terrific job. If anything, his players are letting him down and they're not scoring the chances that their chances warrant. So another example I've looked at too is Mohamed Salah, and I've noticed people saying that they think Salah's washed up, not the player he used to be. Needs to, Liverpool might need to move on from him. Not saying that's not true, but if you look at the data, he's having a good season. He's overperforming his XG by 3 points. XG has him should have scored 10 goals this season, but he's scored 13. So before coming up with massive opinions on football or anything in life, if you've got statistical data there that reflects the overall scenario a bit better, you have to use it, and you have to use that in your judgment of teams and players and leagues. So you're probably wondering why I brought this up, and why is this random guy who talks about betting now talking about team's performance in the EPL and whether Frank Lampard should have been sacked and these kind of things. The reason why I wanted to bring it up was because everyone follows soccer. A lot of people who bet, or at least use Trademate, are following soccer, and everyone's got a team in the EPL, so they've all got opinions on certain things. But I wanted to relate, because it's an easy relatable topic, I want to relate it to betting and how you can look at your sports betting results in the same way as I talked about here. So the first thing you think of when, or at least we talk about, and professional bettors and the best minds in the betting industry know that the most accurate and the best way to look at your results in betting is judging whether you beat the closing line or not. So it kind of equate expected goals and closing line kind of on the same. They're the same kind of metric. They don't get you 3 points at the end of the day, and they don't make you $50 on a bet. But long term, they're the best things to look at, whether you're doing the right things or not, because there's so much randomness in both activities, soccer and betting. So in betting, if your sample size is really low, 100 bets, 200 bets, 300 bets, all the way up to, I'd say, 2,000 bets, there's so much randomness. Although they're big numbers of bets, there's so much randomness that can happen in those results. But if you're beating the closing line in all of those bets, or at least 80% of them or something like that, then over time, once you get to 5,000 bets, 10,000 bets, and so on, you're almost guaranteed to be, mathematically, you should be profitable. So yeah, when you're looking at your betting results, think long term. Don't think short term. Think about, if I keep beating the closing line over and over, I'm getting these mathematical edges, these small mathematical edges every single time. Over time, I'm going to make a lot of money. So to summarize everything I've said, the point I'm trying to get across today is that I think it's important for people to think long term, not short term. Remove all the noise, remove all the randomness, remove all the biases that you have in your head about certain teams, or whether Trademate works, or whether you should have bet on something, these kind of things. Make it easy on yourself. Look at XG. If you're confused whether your team should have won or not, look at XG, and that's a pretty good way to tell, whether your team should have won or not. If you're concerned about a bet you just placed, let's just say you bet on Manchester United versus Liverpool, and Trademate told you to bet on Manchester United, and after you've placed that bet, you're like, oh, why did I not bet on Liverpool? I think they're the better team, these kind of things. Have a look at the closing line afterwards. If you beat the closing line, happy days. You got better odds than you should have got, and over time, keep taking those bets. You're most likely, statistically, you're most likely to turn out a profit over time. So for value bettors or sports bettors in general, beat the closing line. You have to ignore variance, which is hard, I know, and remove all the noise in your head that's telling you to stop betting just because you're going on a bad run. If you're beating the closing line, you should just keep betting, and over time, those short-term bad results will turn into profits. That's all for today, guys. Please, if you enjoyed the video, hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Sorry if I babbled on a bit today, but I think it's a very, very interesting topic for all of us to talk about, how you can compare sports betting with a popular topic like football or EPL and these kind of things. So see you later.